All right, fellas, so I committed in the parking lot to playing around with the idea of having a video put together of our day. It was a really special day. This is the Sunday after the Wednesday that we had together, and I have this great video editor that might be able to do something with the recap for the day that I wrote, which was kind of long, so this video is going to be kind of long, but clearly this is it's a bay in my garage where I keep the ping pong table, and it's all these different pictures, good vibes. Meditation wall is what I call it, and soon many pictures from that day are going to be hanging here as well. But there's something powerful about the video medium, so I just wanted to put this together in a video, see how it comes together, and just keep it in an archive, because coming back into remembrance of that time that I shared with y'all on the mountain, there's a heart coherence that happens there, and it just puts me in a cool state. So I'm kind of making this for my own archives. Obviously want to share it with you since I mentioned it in the parking lot, and then hopefully you guys can get some benefit of it as well in the heart space. So without further ado, I'm just going to read the recap, and then Marius is going to work his magic, and hopefully we'll have a really cool video to hold on to forever. All right, so here we go. A Wednesdayz recap, Alpine loop. It was Wednesday, my dudes. A new bar has been set for Wednesdayz, and that's saying something considering the times we've had since this kicked off on April 1st. And many thanks to all of you who have made it out or have otherwise encouraged us, well, whatever Wednesdayz is. My heart is full. What an epic day on so many levels, and this image somehow captures the essence of the day well. This is the new guy, Jesse, stoically standing unrobed on a ridge between Mounts Helen and Dyer in variable conditions. I can't decide if his nickname should be Coach or Balls. As to the latter, it was noted that Jesse's might be as big as this goat's, who walked up to us to say hi as we started our first traverse. He was so close that in some instances we could have reached out and touched him. He greeted each of us individually as we passed one another. We took his friendly presence as a good omen for safe passage. Well, as to what to call Jesse, I'll just press the easy button and go with the former, Coach. It might not stick, but I like it for now. And this name works for a host of more sincere reasons, which I'll mention in a moment. But it should be noted that my reluctance to call him Balls is partly because in text string this morning, Gary inferred his bits are bigger than Jesse's, and I really don't want to throw fire onto that debate, since to resolve it, we'd have to hike back up, grab the goat in a way that might be consequential, somehow compare Gary's, the goat's, and Jesse's testicles, decide who's worthy of the moniker, etc. Actually, that debate would be much ado about nothing, since I think Jake has them all beat anyhow. You see, Jake was nervous about this climb, the exposure, not knowing how his headspace would be since he hadn't interacted with the mountains in this way before, not wanting to slow the group down and all that. After some encouragement over several days, though, he decided to join us, and we were a vastly better crew for it. Suffice it to say, he had an epic breakthrough kind of day, the kind you have when you courageously lean into fear, make peace with it, and then watch the magic unfold. Magic. That's an interesting word choice. Perhaps I'll come back to that to play with it in a moment. But magic, definition, an extraordinary power or influence seemingly from a supernatural force. I'm in the flow as I write this recap from a gorgeous setting overlooking Garden of the Gods down here in Colorado Springs. So I'll likely prattle a bit now that I've been triggered in a good way around that word. If you need or want to, please just dismiss where my thoughts might take my writing and just enjoy the pictures. For those of you still with me, let's stick with Jake and Jesse for now. Why I believe Jake's balls are enormous and how Jesse has earned a nod as coach. Here's Jake following Brad's route on the easier but still steep ridge between Helen and Dyer with thousands of feet of exposure below them. The pucker factor was high. And above is an image of Jesse assisting Brad on a class 4 descent. Now Brad didn't really need it, but why not get a little beta from Jesse since he was there? Point is, Brad had just belayed several of us down a consequential pitch, had broken down the belay and was free climbing down. This area represented Jake's crux moment for the day in particular, and nothing had been said, but Jake knew it and Jesse knew it. And as we assessed the pitch, Jesse offered assistance, and Jake humbly accepted as he faced one of his greatest fears. Jesse then gained a precarious perch that scared all of us and eagerly helped those who needed or wanted it, but he never inserted himself. So Coach Jesse was a crucial part of an important section of the hike for several of us, and his attitude represented the teamwork that helped make the day so enjoyable. We all fared well, and Jake had not only accomplished something physically, it was something else too. I call it spiritual. Others know it by other names. Magic, indeed. Okay, I'm now solidly stuck on this idea of magic and why it seems to capture the essence of the day, so I'll run with my thoughts for a moment and see where this goes. It wasn't just the activity that was responsible for what I'm trying to articulate here, the magic. What happened is this activity simply brought us into a state that primed the opportunity for flow to flow. And flow's gates are found at the intersection where skill meets challenge. We enter and the mind stills, time goes by quickly, one is completely focused on the present moment. The sacred space of one's very personal ground of being is entered. Peace. So what do you get when you put a group of good dudes together and interact with a wilderness environment in a way that drops them all into flow for hours? Yep, magic. Elation from physical exertion in which limits of skills are explored, time for personal contemplation and introspection is created, meaningful conversation about deep things evolve, thoughtful consideration of others within a sense of teamwork or oneness is enjoyed, inspired business ideas float into awareness, kind considerations of family and friends are entertained, something beyond us is moving around, amongst, and through us, that leaves the soul profoundly satisfied. Here's an image of us about an hour into our hike as the sun rose behind us while we ascended the lush, beautiful wildflower fields of the east face of Mount Helen. And this image could represent the climb into flow that we enjoyed together. And this is a great shot that could represent the deep enjoyment of such an experience. As I get out with you on these adventures and watch things unfold, I'm realizing the magic created while in and shortly after a peak flow state often leads to powerful and positive private and collective impacts. And that's just fantastic. More than a few guys have told me the time they spend just goofing about with other guys during these outings has impacted them in ways that freed them to be better spouses, fathers, friends, businessmen, community leaders. And to illustrate the essence of what I'm referencing, here's part of a note I received this morning that speaks to what I'm observing. Anonymous, but permission was granted to share. Patrick, I wanted to write this email to you while I'm in such a state of deep gratitude. I just want to thank you again for including me on your adventure yesterday. It was so impactful for me in this season of my life. It gave me a chance to live my truth fully by being my authentic self. I was able to connect with everyone and have such deep, meaningful conversations that really helped me expand and grow in new ways. You showed me a new way of living that I've only dreamed of and never thought it was possible to do. I mean, wow. Wow. And there's more on this below, but I'll say here that while expressions of gratitude for what I'm calling the magic are flowing my way and are deeply appreciated, I receive them, then send all those good vibes right back into our little collective by acknowledging what is so clear to me, that this does not happen because of one person. It's a group thing. We're creating the magic together, each of us just doing our unique things to contribute to it. Okay, so I'll stop there. I've enjoyed these few minutes of ruminations and I hope you have too, but it seems I've started this recap with what some might consider a digression. So let's move on to the day itself. Since we were going to get an early-ish start at 5 in the morning, Tom offered us the floor of his place in Breck to crash because the home is under heavy construction during a remodel. Nonetheless, we all took him up on it early in the week during a fun email exchange while logistics were being worked out, with several of us planning to meet for dinner Tuesday night in Breck. It turned out Jake was among the group who met at Tom's before dinner. So upon seeing that our rough early start might not be meaningfully improved upon by a night at Tom's place, he graciously offered us a chance to crash in his incredible 40-acre spread on the top of Hoosier Pass. Kevin Miller and I drove over to Breck Tuesday night from Woodland Park and had arrived in town before the rest of the group was to meet for dinner. I saw a name on a restaurant that triggered so many good mountain biking memories with many guys on this list that I had to suggest it, Kenosha's. Those of you who know will know. So with Jake's offering heartily accepted and Tom's offer sincerely appreciated, dinner at Kenosha's on Tuesday night was great times. Pliny the Elder had a welcome seat at the table and helped set up a theme for the next 24 hours. It was a solid start for the adventure to come. After dinner, we all crashed in various places at Jake's and were sacked out by 11. Apparently I snore a bit and I'm looking into it, and I didn't want to risk bothering folks, so I took my spiffy new silk bag out onto the deck for its first test drive. No comments necessary as I heard my fair share of WTFs about my ensemble Tuesday night. I was and am pleased to report that I highly recommend these things for folks who dislike feeling stuffed into their bags. Slept like a baby, until I started dreaming about the bear Jake had warned me about peeing on me, and then I woke realizing it had started raining. So we rallied at 4 a.m. We were treated to freshly roasted coffee from Jake's fancy grinder maker, and it was solid. And considering the hour, we were all in rather good spirits and moved quickly to make our 4:30 departure time. We fueled up, gathered our gear, loaded into Jake's Jeep and my truck, and rolled towards Spruce Creek Road, which would lead us up the trailhead at a little below 12,000 feet. After a bouncy ride up the road with the forest illuminated by Jake's floodlights, we arrived at the trailhead, grabbed packs, turned on headlamps, and started the climb. It's worth mentioning that this whole day was made possible by Tom and Brad, who guided us. Many thanks to this incredible duo who shows us what 60 plus can look like. And the backstory of what will likely be our group's long history with this loop starts with Tom finally deciding to interact with the epic after it had taunted him for years through the huge great room windows of his mountain home. He called upon Brad and me to do it with him in 2020, and Brad was available, but I had to decline for work. I've heard the stories and have wanted to engage with this route ever since, so I asked them if they'd show us the way, and I'm confident all of us on the trip yesterday would say those ridges now hold a very special place in our hearts, something that likely would not have happened without them stepping up. Thanks, fellas. So our objective was to summit 3, maybe 4 14ers in a half day: Helen, Dyer, Crystal, at peak 10. 7 or 8 hours was our important target for timing because of the forecast. So we needed to move about 8.5 miles and cover 3,700 feet or so of climbing. And so yes, that's a lot of slow going, very technical hiking. The forecast all suggested favorable conditions for our effort: light winds, morning mixed clouds and sun, typical hit or miss Colorado afternoon thunderstorms, 50% chance. We knew our arguably larger than prudent group would have to move rather quickly, considering getting stuck on one of those ridges in a storm would be, well, it would be an experience. And this was a strong group: Jake Cummins, Gary Salter, Jesse Dunlap, Todd Setchell, Brad Goulding, Kevin Miller, Tom Bratchen, and me. Ultra runners, former pro cyclists, marathoners, extreme skiers, multi-sport adventure racers, all accomplished mountain athletes. And everything went smoothly, with so many magic moments along the way. And now that you have a good context, I'll try to rapid fire here a few memories of the day for you. Then you can scroll through what will only be a small sampling of the pictures from the day. A slow waking with profound gratitude for Jake's comfy digs and a warm start. A bouncy ride to the trailhead on Spruce Creek Road. A punchy climb to get the blood flowing and joints limbered up. While a bit confused and turned around within the glow of our headlamps, Tom said somewhere from deep within the trees that the summit of Helen was somewhere this way. So we followed his voice and thus began a surreal steep march through and over deadfall and loose earth, which led us to a pitch straight up the about 25-degree slope of Mount Helen. We ascended about 1,000 feet in all of the beauty that unfolded before us as the light grew brighter, even illuminating a herd of deer on the ridgeline far above us as they delighted in the warmth that had touched them but which had not yet reached us. The scenes of that hour inspired awe, and the excitement for the adventure ahead made the start to the day even more special. We paused to take in a stunning, unique sunrise as the moisture from the night before burned off from the valley and rose toward us in misty formations. We summited Mount Helen at 6:30, right on time. We began the ridge to Father Dyer, the crux part of the day, perfect because we were warmed up but not yet tired. Engaging with this particular stretch of the ridge while tired could easily be fatal. A goat was spotted far off on the ridge, and we commented that it seemed he was walking toward us, and he was. A magical 10 minutes then ensued, during which the goat said hi to each of us as we passed. Considering all that had happened in his head and heart space during the day, I declared the mountain goat Jake's new spirit animal while we were at the tailgate, and Kevin gave Jake some of its fur as a talisman. Indeed, after looking up what it might mean, Jake and I discussed this morning via text how appropriate that just might be. We enjoyed a majestic Class 3-4 climb, which required all of our focus for a couple of hours. Ropes were helpful. Some among us didn't need them. Right at the intersection of challenge and skill. Perfecto flow. Lunch in great spirits with the crux successfully behind us, and while still below the intimidating final pitch to the summit of Dyer. Summit of Dyer. Crystal loomed and clouds started to take some shape. Time to keep moving. We worked our way toward the massive third summit across the more mellow ridge. The terrain allowed for conversation, the nature of some of which is referenced above. Plenty of good guy banter too. Connections made and friendships deepened. We climbed through intermittent sun with swirling clouds creating a mystical aesthetic. Temperatures were perfect and packs had been loaded with dew and experienced consideration for adaptation to the variable conditions. We summited Crystal, right on time. Objective completed, began the descent. Arrived at the saddle between Crystal and Peak 10. Some of us were still feeling peppy and headed on up to Peak 10. Others were hearing the siren song of tailgate beers. So we summited Peak 10 with amazing conversations continuing in pods of 2 and 3. Jake represented the GCC well and brought out a share pack of Fireball, and Wade will be pleased to hear that. We descended toward the parking lot. Kevin and I finally found the 10 minutes we'd been craving just to be still, pause, and take it all in. We stopped in a meadow connected to the earth and were reminded of our connection to everything. On the way out, the crew of 6 who had summited Peak 10 arrived at an enchanting Alpine lake after a slopeside hike through more fields of wildflowers. It was decided a swim was in order, so Jesse, Kevin, and I stripped down and refreshed ourselves as winded hikers from Texas and Kansas gaped. The afternoon storm set into the area after our swim, so we donned some rain gear as we quickly walked the final few miles toward the trailhead to complete the loop, chatting as we strolled along. Lightning flashed and thunder crashed, but the weather never meaningfully set into our zone. We each privately offered our gratitude for safe passage. Skies broke, the sun shined, a great tailgate ensued with lots of cheer. Some women who were hiking by our little party agreed to take our picture, and after snapping a few shots, actually said, "Wow, what a beautiful group of men." Considering the female's ability to intuit more than what meets the eye, I privately noted they were likely recognizing the glow each radiated after such an incredible experience in the backcountry. The forecast had suggested we would not be tailgating, so the beer and food selections were limited. Lesson learned. I promise it won't happen again. We decided to head toward Fatty's in Breck, where Jake introduced those of us inclined to imbibe to a salt and lime Mexican lager that paired perfectly with 2 enormous pizzas and plates of wings. We enjoyed our feast and rolled back up to Jake's to load the gear we'd left at his place earlier that morning. What somehow seemed like a lifetime before, and yet only a moment ago. We said our farewells and headed toward home, deeply fulfilled. Great banter has continued today via text and likely will for some time. So in summary, it's another great one for the books. Yesterday's magic was a collective effort. The generosity of Tom and Jake, Tom and Brad's lead, Jesse's coaching, Jake's cojones, me suggesting the day, Kevin's steady presence and ability to facilitate conversation, Todd's vulnerability and interest in others, Gary's mountain craft and experience, and on I could go. Each of us contributing. And you get the point. The magic is ultimately each of us just being our authentic selves, as the author of the note above suggested in the excerpt that I shared with you. And that type of communal union of mind, body, and spirit can be taken off the mat or mountain and into day-to-day life. It's so simple. Just connect. Be inspired, be in spirit, and then act. Somehow though, it's often not easy. I'm so pleased Wednesdayz has helped make it a little easier for some. And this is the primary reason my heart is so full as I write this. Cheers.